So today we're going to talk about something called a provisional authorization in WITS. And this is something that we're going to use in the context of the ATR program when you as a provider agency are treating a client through ATR and the client needs services from another agency also under ATR. You're going to be able to create an authorization directly for that other provider. It's going to be in what we call a provisional status, which means that BPA will need to sign off on that voucher before the provider can go ahead and accept it. I'm going to start at the beginning just so that we all have a context of how ATR is working. When we first get a referral from BPA, we're going to find it on our referral screen here. And I'm going to take one that I haven't accepted yet. We know that this is a referral to ATR because the program is ATR 3. When I accept this referral, it's going to create the clients for me in my agency. It also creates that client group enrollment. It's going to put the authorization there, which is in a pending status. I can't accept that authorization until I do the GIPRA intake. So we're going to go and look at the activity list, which is going to show us that we do have an intake here. That intake domain is going to be for ATR, and it's going to be classified as an ATR 3 intake. Our GIPRA is down here. Before we do anything else, again, we need to do that GIPRA intake. I know everybody's familiar with the GIPRA. I'm going to move very, very quickly through it. But one of the things you'll notice is at the bottom of each screen, there's no finish or save button. Because SAMHSA requires the GIPRA to be done in one sitting, it needs to be done all at the same time. Another thing you're going to notice is that WITS is going to enforce consistency on the gender, ethnicity, and race from the client profile. So if you try and say that the client is male when they're really female, WITS is going to stop you to make sure that you're being consistent. We're also going to enforce consistency on the number of days here. If I say that the client has never used alcohol, it blanks out the rest of the questions for me, and if I try and say later that they've used alcohol, it's going to count that as incorrect. And this way we can stop any inconsistencies from happening. If I've said that the client uses drugs 3 days a week, or three times in the past 30 days, and I end up putting 4 in here, it's also going to give me an error because it's going to make sure that I've been consistent. So if I try and move forward, it's going to tell me that I can't exceed the value. If they said they used it for 3 days, I can only put a 3 in here. Once again, I'm moving through this and I'm using my arrow or my tab keys to move through and answer my question here. Again, I'm doing it quickly so that we can get through to talk about the rest of the process here. So one of the things you'll note on here is that it tells me, because the client said that they used illegal drugs, it's noting as a warning that there is an inconsistency between using illegal drugs and committing a crime. It's going to let you continue, but it does give you that warning because technically using any illegal substances is a crime. It will let me progress if I don't change that 0 to a 3. And just for speed of data entry here, I'm entering a lot of zeros and nos just so we can get through this since we're not dealing with a real client. Once we get to the end of the GIPRA, we're going to be given all of our answers in a read-only format, and it's really important to scroll down to the bottom and click on that Finish button because that is going to save our GIPRA. Now we have a completed GIPRA, and tonight that will be uploaded to the SAFES website. So now that you have the GIPRA completed, you can go into the authorization under your client profile, and you can actually accept that authorization. And that way, your agency can begin treating this client according to the services that were put on your authorization. So let's just imagine now that the client suddenly needs a service that you don't provide. BPA, in this case, cannot do the referral directly to that agency because we need the referral to be done from this particular ATR episode of care so that it recognizes the GIPRA and it strings those two events together. So what you have been given the ability to do is, again, create what we call a provisional voucher. And you're going to use screens that you're familiar with to do that. The first is we always do a consent. We need to say that we are able to share information with this particular provider. It's called a new provider. The client is agreeing to that. And what's the earliest date of services that we're going to share? We save our consent. Once our consent is saved, we can print out our general consent information form, and we can get the client's signature on that consent form. Once we get the client's signature on our consent form, we can say that the client has in fact signed the consent, and that's going to make my consent read-only. Now I can create a referral. So we're going to refer them because the service isn't available in this particular agency. We're going to send them to that facility, and we're going to refer to the ATR 3 program. That's very important that we refer to the ATR 3 program. So now you'll notice, normally you wouldn't have the ability to do this, but you're going to be given the ability to create an authorization in this particular case. So right under referrals, you're going to click on this authorization. So you're actually creating the authorization that's going to that other treatment agency. We're going to choose the contract information for that. In most cases, you're going to have one item in that drop-down that is going to indicate the entire ATR period of time. And I'm going to save this, and what you'll notice is that the status of the authorization is provisional. That means it can't be effective until BPA signs off on it. And BPA has the ability to do that from their own agency. So once we create that referral or that authorization, we're going to add the services to it. So in this case, if the client needs transportation service or case management services, we're going to be able to add those services that are actual live services that they would need. It's going to default to a number of units for you, and that's set up behind the scenes, so you're going to want to stick to the default number of units. And the only services that you're going to be able to authorize are ones that that provider is actually contracted and approved to do. So if you come in here and you choose services that are show up on the drop-down, you'll notice I tried to choose one and it's no longer available, which is fine. I'm not going to see services that this provider can't do, and the default number of authorized units is something that you should stick to unless you've got a special extenuating circumstance. So now that this particular client needs this particular service from another provider, you have created a consent, a referral, and an authorization. Again, it's a provisional authorization that will go out, and as soon as BPA accepts that provisional authorization, this other provider will be able to accept this referral, and then they can accept the authorization as well. They won't need to do another GIPRA because you've already done the GIPRA, and we've done it from your agency to link those two together. This doesn't have any impact on what you're doing in your own agency. You can continue to treat the client with any services that are on your particular authorization for that client. What this does is allows you to indicate to BPA that this person needs some other type of services that you can't provide. So once again, just as part of that regular intake where you may be doing encounters for this client on services that you're authorized for, you're going to create a consent, a referral, and an authorization for another provider to do services through ATR.